Shalom. Call halal Yahweh Bashem Shai Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors to the elder bishops of Connecticut. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth among the heathen that look like the heathen, and to the Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you I say shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago, coming at you with another lesson in truth. This was a video that was put up by our beloved brother GMS. Get this work, and it's called Vocab Take These L's. And this recording that was done by these two biblical scholars, it's quite a few years old. It's been used before, but it's still relevant, you know, and it will always be relevant because they spoke the absolute truth. Except when you get to the end, because, you know, I'm holding before me the Zondervan Compact Dictionary Bible, and it tells you in here on the election, you know, I brought this information out before, and I've seen a couple of people on TikTok bringing it out, so we know people are watching the videos, listening and learning. But, right here on page, 144, 145, when it starts breaking down the elect and the election, when you get to that paragraph right there, all right? It's hard to see it with the light shining on it, but it's highlighted. But it says, much attention has been given to the relation between God's sovereign choice in election and the foreknowledge of God, since the two concepts are related. Romans 8:27-30 and 1 Peter 1:1. And 2, erroneous interpretations have been implied that election was based on foreknowledge by God, the choice which man would make using foreknowledge, prior foreknowledge. This interpretation not only contradicts the idea of sovereignty, but ignores the basic meaning of the word foreknew. When election refers to salvation, its objects are individual men. The concept of universal election is foreign to the scriptures, rather a particular election only, and you're looking at it on the screen. That particular election is the Israelites, and not the Edomites, as this guy said. And so-called white people on earth today, just like the two that are bringing out this information, are indeed Edomites. So they either know, or which most of them do, or they're just being ignorant to the fact they've believed in the lies of their forefathers. All right, because toward the end of this video, because this is enough, between what I just read and what in this scripture, Romans 4 and 5, it makes it clear that salvation is to the Israelites and only to the Israelites, and all of Paul's letters were to the dispersed Israelites. All right, the ones that were in a Gentile state, and the ones that a state of mind, but still Israelites, and those of them that knew that they were Jews or Israelites or from the tribe of Judah. So without any further ado, let's let this play, and then I'm going to let it play, and because I'm sure there's some who has never seen this. It's only about 8 minutes long, but it's very powerful, because basically these two Edomites scholars basically break it down what we've been saying all along. So let's let it come right up. Matter of fact, one more scripture, Psalms 64 and 8. Let's grab it. (64) 8. And it says, so they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. So let's let these two Edomites tell them themselves, and try to make the separation between so-called white people and Jewish people as if they're not the same people, because they are. Jewish people and white Christians, so-called, they're both Edomites. All right? But without any further ado, let me check the sound. Let's go with it. Let's turn that out.
And of course, we're talking about the Israelite kings of the houses of Judah.
As you see, they have Paul depicted as a pale male, as a so-called white man. Typical lie. You would think that in this day and age, they would stop telling that lie. It's so much evidence to prove that it's not. But oh well.
Sarah and Phares.
Well, absolutely. We're talking about the dispersion of Israel.
Right.
And
right.
Paul knew that the nations that he went to were all dispersed Israelites.
Yes.
And his letters prove it over again and again.
Yes. So that the universalists who want to interpret this phrase the way it has been translated, and you could say it like this: to bear my name before the nations, which Gentiles they assume means non-Israelites.
Right.
Okay. And kings, which is another separate group, whoever they might be, and the children of Israel, as if the first two were different from the latter.
Right, but the grammatical construction is called a hendiatrisin, and it means one by means of three. It means that all three of these entities being mentioned are actually the same. The nations and the kings of the sons of Israel is the literal reading.
Yes. Okay, very good. Well, let me finish with verse 16. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. So for the Paul bashers, these two verses, 15 and 16, are very succinctly declaring that Paul is a chosen vessel.
Absolutely. The Paul bashers are doing us a great disservice.
Yes.
Because these verses not only do that, they prove that Christianity is for only
Right.
the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right, because of the bad translation, the universalists have chosen to universalize it, and the Paul bashers agree with them, not understanding the grammar here.
Well, the Paul bashers' biggest mistake is simply taking for granted that the mainstream translators translated all this properly.
Right, absolutely.
And they botched it at every turn.
Yeah,
they universalized it, they twisted it and perverted it at every turn.
Right.
And this is one of the primary verses.
Yes, very good. So let me just, one more question before we close this evening. Do you think that this false translation, or this mistranslation here, is deliberate, or are the King James, it appears to me, this is the conclusion that I've come to for a lot of these really bad translations, is that these translations from the Greek in the New Testament, especially the writings of Paul, it sounds to me like these King James translators didn't know Greek that well.
It seems to be on many occasions that they did not know Greek that well.
Okay.
And that men before them made errors.
Yeah.
But the biggest error, the biggest sin, are the translators of recent times,
yes,
who should know better, who after 200
yes,
years, the scholarship.
Let me just say that the truth does not benefit the powers that be. That's why they don't tell the truth, because they've established the lies that the impostors over in the land of Israel, and that the Lord's people are pale people or white people, all right, which are Edomites. Because what you're going to hear him say at the end, that there was no letter to the blacks, no letters to the Arabs, no letter to the Edomites. You didn't hear him say there was no letters to the white people. All right? Because these guys are so-called white men, which is a made-up social construct. And they're the ones that's not included in this. All right? In the letters of Paul. And he's right. Christianity is for Israelites. It was created by Israelites. The Council of Nicaea was just a bunch of wicked Israelites who were going off, but Christianity, all right, when they created Catholicism, that is, but Christianity itself, or the Christians, the original Christians were indeed Israelites, and I'm going to read a couple scriptures to substantiate that at the end. But let's let them continue.
That the Englishman has brought to the world is simply amazing.
Right.
The work that they did in the Victorian age and the age of the empire.
Lying.
All right. The work that they did in archaeology and in language studies, and I do the best that I can to follow that legacy.
Right.
And that is why I use all classical English in the sense of, Victorian English references.
Yes.
That's why I use the Liddell and Scott lexicon.
Right.
I don't use any of the modern trash, because a lot of that's watered down and politically corrected.
Right.
That's why I read the Loeb Library Greek classics, because they were all translated in like the 1920s and 30s at the peak of English scholarship.
Okay.
Most of them were translated by English scholars.
Right. And so we can also detect in the New Testament a lot of Catholic influence as well. Okay?
Right, and in the 1600s...
And remember, Catholic means universal. Salvation is not universal. The Bible is a book that was written to and for the nation of Israel. All right? Point blank, period. It will apply to the other nations only after the kingdom has been set up and all the nations are forced to follow the ways of the Bible. That will be the new standard of living once the kingdom of heaven is set up, which will be set up here on earth, headed by who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, King David himself, and then the rest of the 144,000 governing body, which will be the new government for all humanity for all time.
When the translators did translate, if indeed they knew any Greek, they had to know some, right?
Right.
They had to universalize. They had to accept universalized interpretations.
Yes.
Because they knew they belonged in Christianity, but they did not know how.
Right. They did.
And that's where he just lied. That was to control the masses. They included everyone so they could control everyone, because if you told all the heathen that they're all going to be the future slaves and servants of the Israelites in the kingdom to come, they couldn't have gotten people to be, Christianity wouldn't be the biggest religion on the planet, or second biggest, whichever one is that or Muslim. I think Christianity is actually the biggest. So that's why they did it. So he just lied right there.
Not have the archaeology and the Greek scholarship and the scholarship in the classics that later generations had.
Yeah, they did not understand that they were Israelites, and the Jews were making the claim that they were.
And so that's what the men who translated the Bible for King James knew very well that they were Israelites. King James knew that he was an Israelite. The Scots and the Irish, the black ones, the real ones, knew that they were Israelites. Okay? They knew. They were very well aware of it. That's why King James brought together Scotland, Ireland, and Britain to stop the gangbanging. And who gangbangs today? Jacob. Both the northern and southern kingdom. So he stopped the gangbanging. All right? You could throw the Danes in there too when the Vikings showed up. They were all the same people by race and separated themselves by names and cliques, and were gangbanging on each other, basically.
So then who are we?
Right.
It's probably what they were thinking.
They just took for granted the Jewish definitions of a lot of terms, like Gentiles.
Right.
But Jerome, when he translated the Vulgate...
Which shows you that Jewish transitions of Gentile, that Judaism is a whole different thing from the Bible and Christianity. All right? You got to remember, Jewish people, their book is the Talmud. All right? The Bible is a front for them. The book that they worship and follow is the Talmud. If they were really the Israelites, they would not subscribe to the Talmud, or the Talmud, as we like to call it.
There are other words besides gentilis that he could have used.
Okay.
But a gentilis indicates somebody of the same race.
Yes.
Yep.
Not necessarily of the same nation, but of the same race.
Of the same.
It's just like when you get to Acts 6:1 and I believe Acts 9:29. Let me check real quick. They use the word Hellenists there. All right. The disputes between the Hellenists and matter of fact, let me just read it. Let me go to it real quick. I've been wanting to, I'm glad that the brother put this video up because he made it easy to find. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. But this is Acts 9:29. And it reads, and he spake boldly in the name of the Lord Yahushai, and disputed against the Grecians, but they went to about to slay him against the Grecians. When you look that word up, Grecians, in that scripture, Acts 9:29, and also in Acts 6. Hold on. I'm trying to go back to 6. I'm going to read it real fast too. Acts 6:1. And And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily administration. So both in Acts 9 and 29 and Acts 6 and 1, that word Grecian there, the word there is Hellenists. And when you look that word Hellenist up, the word there is Greek. It tells you that Hellenist was referring to a Greek-speaking Jew, or Greek that made, or Israelite that made Greekish customs their way of life. So what that means is that they were very well aware when they were printing the book of Acts, all right, that it was that but both the Jews and the Gentiles were still talking about Israelites. That it was not talking about the heathen nations, white people, the white Grecians, or the African Grecians, or the Chinese Grecians, or all the other. Because you got to remember, Greece was like being in New York or Chicago. All people were there. Rome was like being in Chicago or New York. All people were there. All right. Even though the Edomites were the ruling class people, just as they are today, but all nations were there. So a Gentile, meaning a natural Gentile, a heathen nation, that would have meant anyone. But in the Bible, this message was to the Israelites, to the Jews, and to the rest of Israel. All right. So now that we clarify that, matter of fact, I can even give you the number so that anyone can go and look it up for themselves. That number there for Hellenista, that's what's written there, what Grecian is G1675. All right, G1675. This also can be found in Acts 11, 19 and 20, and then Acts 2, 9 through 11. All right. So that's Hellenista, and it's G1675, and that was a Greek-speaking Jew. So it had nothing to do when it says whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord. The whosoever was ye men of Israel. Hear these words. All right. It had nothing to do. The Grecians who were Israel. Hear these words. All right. The ones that were dressing like these people, right, that you see on the screen, all tattooed up, eating pork and living this foul lifestyle. Okay. Those that were converting and coming back. You can only come back to something that you were a part of. You can't be adopted or come back to something. You can't come back to something that you were never a part of. Let's let them continue.
Right, exactly.
And there are other words in Latin that denote people of other countries
Yes.
that don't make that distinction.
Okay.
They don't have that connotation.
Right. And the whole world has been fooled by the Jewish redefinition of the word Gentile to mean non-Jew.
And it never did.
And it never did. That's right.
And Paul,
You see that?
the commission here to Paul is to go and
So
bring.
Christianity is a joke, man. As a matter of fact, we can go to the end.
He says that the Edomites are vessels fit for destruction.
There we go.
Paul
Right.
could have very easily perverted Christianity.
Right. And
The Paul bashers are just idiots for not seeing
And
that.
of course, in other books, Paul definitely says that the Edomites are vessels fit for destruction.
Of destruction,
Yeah.
right.
He does not include them among the Israelites.
And he doesn't include any nation that's non-Israelite.
Right. And
Every one of those people Paul wrote an epistle to were dispersed Israelites.
Right, right. And he excludes the descendants of Ishmael, which is your today's Arabs, right?
Absolutely. He excludes them, explicitly
Yes.
excludes them.
Right. So if you thoroughly understand the writings of Paul, and obviously this is one of the verses in verse 15 here, that can be universalized because of the way it's translated.
And if
Okay.
it's translated correctly, it's absolutely not universal.
That's right. Yeah, very good.
It's exclusive.
Yeah.
So you hear that? So that's this guy. And then he goes on to say there was no book to the blacks, no books to the Arabs, no books to the Edomites. He is an Edomite. This is a Jewish guy. All right? And so let's go to the book of Acts 11 and 26. All right? And it tells you, and when they had found him, he brought him unto Antioch, and it came to pass that the whole year they assembled themselves in the church and taught much people, and disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. All right? The disciples. What were disciples called? Even the street gang here in Chicago, the BDs, they were first called black disciples or Black gangster disciples. Why? Because the Bible, they read that the disciples were black. This is Acts 13:1. It says, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and Lucius and Cyrene and Madain, which had been brought up from Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. And I've brought out many a times in the dictionary Bible, let me just grab it. Salakia. And just show it. Might as well. In the Winston Simplified Dictionary Bible Encyclopedic Edition, the definition of nigger, of the word Niger, or what they call Niger. People will pronounce it Niger, but it's not Niger at all. It's actually pronounced nigger. And I've proven it so many times, yet people still want to say Niger. All right? Niger. That is one pronunciation, but that's not the pronunciation that it is in the Bible. It's actually nigger, which means the same thing as Niger. It's simply, nigger only meant black or dark. It didn't have the negative connotation, and the definition that I'm about to read proves it. That negative connotation to the word nigger came in America during slavery. It says nigger. All right, you see that? From the French, Negro, and it is, look at the phonetic spelling. Niger. Niger is pronounced nigger. All right, you read that definition. Dark skinned one. Nigger, black, a Negro. All right. Now, usually a contemptuous or vulgar term. All right. Any dark-skinned person prevailing among the characteristics of American Negroes. We tell you that the Negroes that were brought here on slave ships were Israelites. That's facts. And to prove it, now we just proved that. Let's click over to the new translation, Acts 13:1 in the new NLT New Translation. Read it at the top. Barnabas and Saul are commissioned among the prophets and teachers of the church at Antioch, Syria. Barnabas and Simeon were called black. All right. Call halal Yahweh Bashem Abashai Bashem Rakak Wadash Wa Ababa Bal Kwam Yasharala. And vocab and the rest of you Christians and apologists, you just got to continue to take these L's. This ain't for you. Shalom.